Bonjour et béni-vous. Les Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. Je m'appelle Ryan Mckern. Bonsoir. And welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern. Join us weekly for tales of haunted history, paranormal, ghost stories, all things horror. Warm yourself to the proverbial fire, dim the lights, and welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. Disclaimer for today's episode. If you're thinking of visiting Six Flags New Orleans abandoned location, do not break in, do not enter. There's tons of security, and you will be prosecuted. A lot of people can get drone shots from just outside the property, but as a safety precaution, since the place has been abandoned for 17 years and has alligators roaming around in parts of the flooded areas, please be safe and do not enter the park. Imagine being at a theme park where hundreds of thousands of people visited a day. Now imagine it being abandoned. All of a sudden, stays that way for well over a decade after a nasty storm blew through the city, resulting in one of the coolest and costliest and deadliest natural disasters in American history. The old Six Flags New Orleans still stands today, almost 15 years after Katrina barreled into the Big Easy, resulting in well over $1 billion of damage and untold lives taken. Most of the park still stands, but still rotting away from the inside out. But when you step into the grounds of the park, it's like being in a place frozen in time. It's almost the same in some of the other buildings that have long since been abandoned and have yet to be reopened. But is the former Six Flags in New Orleans packed with paranormal activity? Or is it an eerie sight to behold with no ghostly spirits nearby? Six Flags New Orleans Park was originally known as Jazzland, which paid homage to the rich jazz history and culture that took place in New Orleans. It spanned nearly 140 acres and was operated by Alpha Smart Parks, a subsidiary of a Spanish-based company named Parques Orientos. The theme parks were packed with all kinds of amusements, like rides, games, and entertainment options. One of the most notable rides is known as the Mega Zeph. The roller coaster ride was made from wood, but was made with a steel frame to prevent any termite infestations from destroying the ride itself. The steel frame had also enough strength to withstand hurricane force. The Mega Zeph was a reincarnation of a roller coaster that was popular at a once closed amusement park that was situated near Lake Pontchartrain Beach. However, the location of Jazzland was situated just on the opposite side of the lake, where the old Lake Pontchartrain Beach Park was located. While the replica originally planned, it was quickly scrapped due to the size, and in place was a much larger roller coaster. Other roller coasters included a couple of smaller designs like Rex Rail Runners and the Zydeco Scream. While Alpha Smart Park specializes in water parks, they did include a long water ride along with many other common theme park rides, like merry-go-rounds. Unfortunately, the park was not faring well financially. No more than a year after the park opened, the lease was put up for sale, with Six Flags purchasing it shortly thereafter. Upon the initial acquisition, Six Flags opted not to change the Jazzland name until 2003, when it was renamed Six Flags New Orleans. As the Jazzland name was shed, newer rides arrived to replace the old ones. One of them included an inverted roller coaster known as Batman, the Ride. Other rides that were added to the park were also coming from other Six Flags parks in the southeast. One of them was a looping roller coaster known as the Jester, which was a longtime fixture at the Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Things turned around when Six Flags took over the park, and it almost looked unrecognizable to many of the visual visitors of Jazzland. But soon, Six Flags established many rides and amusements that tied into the culture of New Orleans. However, the park planned on adding a section that was going to be a standalone water park. Plans had begun at the beginning of 2005, with a major announcement that was scheduled of August of that year. But due to Hurricane Katrina, the plans were postponed and later scrapped altogether. The final date of operation was August 21st, 2005. With the children returning to school, the business was about to slow down. However, the park was planning to open for one final weekend before wrapping up for the year. It had never happened, and the city was evacuating New Orleans ahead of a hurricane's imminent landfall. Since the park was located on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain, a piping system was installed so that Six Flags was protected from any flooding due to any spillage from the lake's overflow. As expected, when the storm arrived, the lake overflowed, and therefore led to flooding, when the piping itself failed to handle all the water that was being flowed into the pipes themselves. The aftermath of Katrina. By the end of the storm, the entire park was flooded along with at least 80% of the new city of New Orleans. Since the park was located in a low-lying section of New Orleans, more than 20 feet of floodwater engulfed the entire park, resulting in complete devastation. Once the water levels dissipated, it took nearly an entire month for the water to leave the park itself, due to the extensive level of damage from the floodwaters and wind. The park was closed indefinitely, despite announcements throughout the couple of years that it would remain closed until further notice. The only ride that was said to be left unscathed was Batman, the Ride. The reason being was due to the fact that the ride was constructed on an elevated platform that also had corrosion-resistant materials as part of its structure. The ride itself was removed from Six Flags in 2006 and was relocated to Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, where it underwent a rebrand the following year as Goliath. Likewise, the water contained corrosive materials that would only accelerate the damage to all the other rides, including the roller coasters. As a result, the damage is estimated to be slightly over $32 million. In July 2006, Six Flags announced that the park was still closed indefinitely. As it was attempting to estimate the damage, the park was considered a total loss. Because of this, Six Flags had no intention of rebuilding the park and found itself looking for a way out of the 75-year-long lease that it had signed back in 2002. Ryan Mckern, who was the mayor of New Orleans at the time, wanted Six Flags to honor the lease and rebuild. Eventually, the park was closed for good, citing poor financial figures that had occurred before the storm ever occurred. Prior to the storm, Six Flags had already planned to shut down underperforming parks. Long after the park's closure, it had long been a place where thrill seekers and paranormal fanatics would visit simply for its abandoned buildings. While there have been no reports of any ghostly activity, many who have visited the abandoned park have reported having eerie, uneasy feelings at the sight of the dead silence and visions of abandoned buildings riddled with graffiti. One visitor recalled saying that it was like traveling back in time and being the only one there in the time period. Others have reported hearing random sounds of metal clanging and phantom noises. Despite the city of New Orleans banning anyone from visiting the park, many have ignored the no trespassing orders and have taken pictures or videos of their discoveries. As of 2019, Mayor LaTroy Cantrell had already discussed the idea with city park officials about tearing down the park itself. The demolition project itself is said to be estimated around $1.3 million. I would like to thank NOLA.com, OnlyInOurState.com, AbandonedAmerica.us, and NOLAGhost.com for research in making today's episode. Thank you again for joining me in the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast, my friends. Please subscribe and watch out for weekly episodes to be uploaded to YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Google, and more. And until we meet again, I am your host, Ryan Mckern. Au revoir.